Very well then. Quite pleased that you could all join us on this fine October afternoon. Please filter in, take your seats. My name is Mr. Mona, and I wish to tell you a tale of Gala night. Please have a seat. Good afternoon, Jalpa. Please take your seats. You're late. Tim, you're late. Sambhava, Anna, pick up the pace, please. You're late. It's not befitting Englishmen. Very well, then. Now, this morning I received a letter from my nephew Augustine, who has become a vicar now at Walsingford below Shivney-on-Thames, a delightful resort, mostly honeysuckle and apple-cheeked villagers. He has quite an interesting story to relate. It deals with the loves of Ronald Bracy Gascoigne and Hypatia Wace. Hypatia is a school friend of my nephew's wife. She has been staying at the vicarage for some time now, nursing her through a sharp attack of mumps. She is also the niece and ward of Augustine's superior of the cloth, the Bishop of Stortford. You may be familiar with Augustine through his previous adventures with this bishop and a certain tonic called Mulliner's Buck You Uppo. In case you have not heard of it, Mulliner's Buck You Uppo was invented by my brother Wilfrid, the well-known analytical chemist. It is not often administered to human beings, having been designed primarily to encourage elephants here in India to conduct themselves with an easy nonchalance during the tiger hunts which are so popular in this country. But occasionally human beings do partake of it, as Augustine did, with impressive results. You might say that it bucked him up very considerably. It acted on his bishop, too, when he tried it in a similar manner. It is undoubtedly a most efficient tonic, strong and invigorating. Well, Hypatia Wace loved Ronald Bracy Gascoigne with all the fervor of a young girl's heart, and they were provisionally engaged to be married. Provisionally, I say, because before the firing squad could actually be assembled, it was necessary for the young couple to obtain the consent of the Bishop of Stortford. Mark that. Their engagement was subject to the Bishop of Stortford's consent. This was the snag that protruded jaggedly from the middle of the primrose path of their happiness, and for quite a while it seemed as if Cupid must inevitably stub his toe upon it. I will select as the point at which to begin my tale a lovely evening in June, when all nature seemed to smile, and the rays of the setting sun fell like molten gold upon the picturesque garden of the vicarage at Walsingford below Shivney-on-Thames. On a rustic bench beneath a spreading elm, Hypatia Wace and Ronald Bracy Gascoigne watched the shadows lengthening across the smooth lawn, and to the girl there appeared something symbolical and ominous about this creeping blackness. To her, it was as if the sunbathed lawn represented her happiness, and the shadows, the doom that was creeping upon it.
Are you doing anything at the moment, Ronnie?
What? Doing anything? Am I doing anything? No, I'm not doing anything.
Then kiss me.
Oh, right-o, I see what you mean. Rather a scheme. I will.
He did so, and for some moments they clung together in a close embrace.
Whoa! 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 Hey! Whoa! Beetle or something! Down my back! Whoa! Hey! I fancy... beetle or something probably fell off the tree. Darling, could you, darling? I must say... could you get it?
Kiss me again.
In 1 second, old girl. The instant I've dealt with this beetle or something, would you mind just fetching me a whack on about the fourth knob from the spine? Reading from the top downwards, I fancy that would do a thing a bit. Woo! Hey! Woo! Hey!
Is this a time to talk of beetles?
Well, don't you know? They seem to rather force themselves on your attention. When they got down your back, I dare say you've had the experience. Oh, I don't suppose in the ordinary way I mention beetles half a dozen times a year, but I should say, oh boy, the fifth knob would be about the spot now. A good sharp slosh. with plenty of follow-through ought to do the trick.
Hypatia seethed with that febrile exasperation, which, since the days of Eve, has come upon women who find themselves linked to a cloth head.
You poor sap. You keep babbling about beetles, and you don't appear to realize that if you want to kiss me, you'd better cram in all the kissing you can now while the going is good. It doesn't seem to have occurred to you that after tonight you're going to fade out of the picture.
Oh, I say, no, why?
My Uncle Percy arrives this evening.
The bishop?
Yes, and my Aunt Priscilla.
Well, and you think they won't be any too frightfully keen on me?
I know they won't. I wrote and told them we were engaged. And I had a letter this afternoon saying you wouldn't do.
Oh, no. I say, really. Oh, I say, dash it.
Out of the question, my uncle said, and underlined it.
Not really. Not absolutely underlined it.
Yes, twice, in very black ink.
A cloud darkened the young man's face. The beetle had begun to try out a few tentative dance steps on the small of his back, but he ignored it. A tiller troop of beetles could not have engaged his attention now.
But what has he got against me?
Well, for one thing, he's heard you were sent down from Oxford.
But all the best men are. Look at... what's his name? Chap who wrote poems. Sherlock. Or some such name.
And he knows that you dance a lot.
Well, what's wrong with dancing? I'm not very well up on these things, but didn't David dance before Saul? Or am I thinking of a couple other fellows? Anyway, I know that somebody danced before somebody, and it was extremely highly thought of in consequence.
David...
No, I'm not saying it was David, mind you. It may quite easily have been Samuel.
David...
No, or even Nimshi, the son of Bimshi, or somebody like that.
David or Samuel or Nimshi, the son of Bimshi, did not dance at the Home from Home.
Her allusion was to the latest of those frivolous nightclubs, which spring up from time to time on the reaches of the Thames, which are within a comfortable distance from London. This one stood some half a mile from the vicarage gates.
Is that what the bish is beefing about? You don't mean to tell me he really objects to the Home from Home? Why, a cathedral couldn't be more rigidly respectful. Does he realize that the place has only been raided 5 times in its whole course of its existence? A few simple words of explanation will put all this right. I'll have a talk with the old boy.
No, it's no use talking. He's made up his mind. One of the things he said in his letter was that rather than countenance my union to a worthless worldling like you, he would gladly see me turn into a pillar of salt like Lot's wife. Genesis 19:26. And nothing could be fairer than that, could it? So what I would suggest is that you start in immediately to fold me in your arms and cover my face with kisses. It's the last chance you'll get.
The young man was about to follow her advice, for he could see there was much in what she said. But at this moment, there came from the direction of the house the sound of a manly voice, trawling the psalm for the second Sunday after Septuagesima. And an instant later their host, the Reverend Augustine Mulliner, appeared in sight. He saw them and came hurrying across the garden, leaping over the flower beds with extraordinary lissomness.
Amazing elasticity that bird has, both physical and mental. How does he get that way?
He was telling me last night he has a tonic which he takes regularly. It's called Mulliner's Buck You Uppo and acts directly on the red corpuscles.
Well, I wish he would give the bish a swig of it. I say, hip old girl. That's rather a notion. Don't you think it's rather a notion? It looks to me like something of an idea. If the bish were to dip his beak in the stuff, it might make him take a better view of me.
Hypatia, like all girls who intend to be good wives, made it a practice to look on any suggestions thrown out by her future lord and master as fatuous and futile.
I never heard anything so silly.
Well, I wish you would try it. No harm in trying it, what?
Of course I'll do nothing of that kind.
Well, I do think you might try it. I mean, try it, don't you know?
He could speak no further on the matter, for now they were no longer alone. Augustine had come up, and his kindly face looked grave.
I say, Ronnie, old bloke, I don't want to hurry you, but I think I ought to inform you that the Bishes, male and female, are even now on their way up from the station. I should be popping if I were you. The prudent man looketh well to his going. Proverbs 14:15.
Well, all right. I suppose you wouldn't care to sneak out tonight and come and have one final spot of shoe slithering at the home from home? It's Gala night, you know, and it might be fun. Give us a chance of saying goodbye properly and all of that.
I never heard anything so silly. Of course I'll come.
Right-ho. Meet you down the road about 12 then.
He walked swiftly away, and presently was lost to sight behind the shrubbery.
Cheer up, old onion. Don't lose hope. Remember, many waters cannot quench love. Song of Solomon 8:7.
I don't see what quenching love has got to do with it. All trouble is that I've got an uncle complete with gaiters and a hat with bootlaces on it who can't see Ronnie with a telescope.
I know, and my heart bleeds for you. I've been through all this sort of thing myself. When I was trying to marry Jane, I was stymied by a father-in-law-to-be who had to be seen to be believed. A chap, I assure you, who combined chronic shortness of temper with the ability to bend polkas around his biceps. Tact was what won him over, and tact is what I propose to employ in your case. I have an idea at the back of my mind. I won't tell you what it is, but you may take it from me. It's the real Tabasco.
How kind you are, Augustine.
It comes from mixing with Boy Scouts. You may have noticed the village is stiff with them. But don't you worry, old girl. I owe you a lot for the way you've looked after Jane all these last weeks, and I'm going to see you through. If I can't fix up your little affair, I'll eat my hymns, ancient and modern, and uncooked at that.
And with these brave words, Augustine Mulliner turned 2 handsprings, vaulted over the rustic bench, and went about his duties in the parish. Augustine was rather relieved when he came down to dinner that night, to find that Hypatia was not to be among those present. The girl was taking her meal on a tray with Jane, his wife, in the invalid's bedroom, and he was consequently able to embark with freedom on the discussion of her affairs. As soon as the servants had left the room, accordingly, he addressed himself to the task.
Now listen, you two dear good souls. What I want to talk to you about, now that we're alone, is this business of Hypatia and Ronald Bracy Gascoigne.
Please, Mr. Mulliner.
The lady bishopess was a woman of ample and majestic build. A friend of Augustine's, who had been attached to the tank corps during the war, had once said that he knew nothing that brought the old days back more vividly than the sight of her. All she needed, he maintained, was a steering wheel and a couple machine guns, and you could have moved her up to any front line and no questions asked. But Augustine was not to be deterred. Like all us Mulliners, he was at heart a man of reckless courage.
They tell me you're thinking of bunging up a span into the works. Not true, I hope.
Quite true, Mr. Mulliner. Am I not right, Percy?
Quite.
We have made careful inquiries about the young man and are satisfied that he is entirely unsuitable.
Would you say that? A pretty good egg, I've always found him. What's your main objection to the poor lizard?
We learn that he is frequently to be seen dancing at an advanced hour, not only in gilded London nightclubs, but even in what should be the pure atmosphere of Wallingford below Chimney-on-Thames. There is a resort in this neighborhood known, I believe, as the Home from Home.
Yes, just down the road. It's Gala night tonight, if you care to look in. Fancy dress optional.
I understand that he is to be seen there almost nightly. Now, against dancing quad dancing, I have nothing to say. Properly conducted, it is a pleasing and innocuous pastime. In my own younger days, I myself was no mean exponent of the polka, the schottisch, and the rodderly coverly. Indeed, it was at a dance in aid of the distressed daughters of clergymen of the Church of England Relief Fund that I first met my husband.
Really? Well, cheerio.
But dancing, as the term is understood nowadays, is another matter. I have no doubt that what you call a gala night would prove on inspection to be little less than one of those orgies where perfect strangers of both sexes unblushingly throw colored cellular balls at one another, and in other ways behave in a manner more suitable to the cities of the plain than our dear England. No, Mr. Mulliner, if this young man, Ronald Bracy Gascoigne, is in the habit of frequenting places of the type of Home from Home, he is not a fit mate for a pure young girl like my niece Hypatia. Am I not correct, Percy?
Perfectly correct, my dear.
Oh, right-ho, then.
Living in the country had given Augustine Mulliner the excellent habit of going early to bed. He had a sermon to compose on the morrow, and in order to be fresh and at his best in the morning, he retired shortly before 11. And as he anticipated an unbroken 8 hours of refreshing sleep, it was with no little annoyance that he became aware, towards midnight, of a hand upon his shoulder, shaking him. Opening his eyes, he found that the light had been switched on and that the Bishop of Stortford was standing at his bedside.
Hello. Anything wrong?
Nothing, my dear fellow. In fact, very much the reverse. How are you, Mulliner?
I feel fine, Bish.
I'll bet you 2 chasubles to a hassock you don't feel as fine as I do. It must be something in the air of this place. I haven't felt like this since boat race night of year 1893. Wow! Whoopee! How godly are thy tents, O Jacob, and thy tenterbuckles, O Israel, numbers 44 and 5.
Gripping the rail of the bed, the bishop endeavored to balance himself on his hands with his feet in the air. Augustine looked at him with growing concern. He could not rid himself of a curious feeling that there was something sinister behind this ebullience. Often before, he had seen his guest in a mood of dignified animation, for the robust cheerfulness of the other's outlook was famous in ecclesiastical circles. But here, surely, was something more than dignified animation. The bishop completed his gymnastics and sat down upon the bed.
Yes, I feel like a fighting cock. Mulliner, I'm full of beans. And the idea of wasting the golden hours of the night in bed seems so silly that I had to get up and look in on you for a chat. And this is what I want to speak to you about, my dear fellow. I wonder if you recollect writing to me, round about Epiphany it would have been, to tell me of the hit you made in the Boy Scouts pantomime here. You played Sinbad the Sailor, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right.
Well, I've come here to ask you, my dear Mulliner, can you by any chance leave your hand on that Sinbad costume? I want to borrow it, if I may.
What for?
Well, never mind what for, Mulliner. Sufficient for you to know the motives of the soundest churchmanship render it essential for me to have that suit.
Well, very well, Bish. I'll find it for you tomorrow.
Tomorrow will not do. This dilatory spirit of putting things off, the sluggish attitude of laissez-faire and procrastination are scarcely what I expected to find in you, Mulliner. But there, let us say no more. Just dig up the Sinbad costume and look slippy about it, and we will forget the whole matter. What does it look like?
Just an ordinary sailor suit, Bish.
Excellent. Excellent. Some species of headgear goes with it, no doubt.
A cap with HMS Blotto on the band.
Admirable. Admirable. Then, my dear fellow, if you will just let me have it, I will trouble you no further tonight. Your day's toil in the vineyard has earned repose. The sleep of the laboring man is sweet. Ecclesiastes 5:12.
As the door closed behind his guest, Augustine was conscious of a definite uneasiness. Only once before had he seen his spiritual superior in quite this exalted condition. That had been precisely 2 years ago, when they had gone down to Harchester College to unveil the statue of Lord Hemel of Hempstead. On that occasion, he recollected, the bishop, under the influence of an overdose of Buck-you-uppo, had not been content with unveiling the statue simply. He had gone out in the small hours of the night and painted it pink. Augustine could still recall the surge of emotion which had come upon him when, leaning out of the window, he had observed the prelate climbing up the water-spout on his way back to his room. And he still remembered the sorrowful pity with which he had listened to the other's lame explanation that he was a cat belonging to the cook. Sleep, in present circumstances, was out of the question. With a pensive sigh, Augustine slipped on a dressing gown and went downstairs to his study. It would ease his mind, he thought, to do a little work on that sermon of his. Augustine's study was on the ground floor, looking out onto the garden. It was a lovely night, and he opened the French windows, the better to enjoy the soothing scents of the flowers beyond. Then, seating himself at his desk, he began to work. The task of composing a sermon which should practically make sense and yet not be above the heads of a rustic flock was one which always caused Augustine Moner to concentrate intensely. Soon he was lost in his labor and oblivious to everything but the problem of how to find a word of one syllable that meant supralapsarianism. A glaze of preoccupation had come over his eyes, and the tip of his tongue, protruding from the left corner of his mouth, revolved in slow circles. From this waking trance, he emerged slowly to the realization that somebody was speaking his name, and that he was no longer alone in the room. Seated in his armchair, her live young body wrapped in a green dressing gown was Hypatia Wace.
Hello? You here?
Hello? Yes, I'm here.
I thought you had gone down to Home from Home to meet Ronald.
We never made it. Ronnie rang up to say that he had a private tip that the place was to be raided tonight. So we thought it wasn't safe to start anything.
Quite right. Prudence first. Whatsoever thou takest in hand, remember the end, and thou shalt never do amiss. Ecclesiastes 7:36.
I couldn't sleep. I saw the light, so I came down. I'm so miserable, Augustine.
About this Ronnie business?
Yes.
There. Everything is going to be hotsy-totsy.
I don't see how you make that out. Have you heard Uncle Percy and Aunt Priscilla talk about Ronnie? They couldn't be more off the poor, unfortunate fish if he were the Scarlet Woman of Babylon.
I know. But as I hinted this afternoon, I have a little plan. I have been giving your case a good deal of thought, and I think you'll agree with me that it is your Aunt Priscilla who is the real trouble. Sweeten her, and the bish will follow her lead. What she thinks today, he always thinks tomorrow. In other words, if we can win her over, he will give his consent in a minute. Am I wrong, or am I right?
Yes, that's right, as far as it goes. Uncle Percy always does what Aunt Priscilla tells him to. But how are you going to sweeten her?
Oh, with Mulliner's Buck-you-uppo. You remember how often I have spoken to you of the properties of that admirable tonic. It changes the whole mental outlook like magic. We have only to slip a few drops into your Aunt Priscilla's hot milk tomorrow night, and you will be amazed at the results.
You really guarantee that?
Oh, absolutely.
Then that's fine, because that's exactly what I did this evening. Ronnie was suggesting it when it came up this afternoon, and I thought I might as well try it. I found the bottle in the cupboard in here, and I put some in Aunt Priscilla's hot milk, and in order to make a good job of it, some in Uncle Percy's toddy, too.
How much?
Oh, not much. I didn't want to poison the dear old things. About a tablespoon apiece.
Are you aware that the medium dose for an adult elephant is 1 teaspoonful?
No.
Yes, the most fearful consequences result from anything in the nature of an overdose. No wonder the bishop seemed a little strange in his manner just now.
Did he seem strange in his manner?
He came into my room and did handsprings on the end of the bed and went away in my Sinbad the Sailor suit.
What did he want that for?
I scarcely faced the thought. But can he have been contemplating a visit to the home from home? It is Gala night, remember?
Why, of course. And that must have been why Aunt Priscilla came to me about an hour ago and asked me if I could lend her my Columbine costume.
She did?
Certainly she did. I couldn't think what she wanted it for, but now, of course, I see.
Run up to her room and see if she's still there. If I'm not very much mistaken, we have sown the wind, and we shall reap the whirlwind. Hosea 8:7.
The girl hurried away, and Augustine began to pace the floor feverishly. He had completed 5 laps and was beginning a 6th when there was a noise outside the French windows, and a sailorly form shot through and fell panting into the armchair.
Bish!
Augustine watched the bishop, deeply concerned. There was a sharp-sword look about his guest. Part of the Sinbad costume had been torn away as if by some irresistible force, and the hat was missing. His worst fears appeared to have been realized.
Bish, what has been happening?
Whew. Some binge.
Tell me what happened.
Well, when I get to the home from home, everyone was dancing. Nice orchestra. Nice tune. Nice floor, so I danced too.
You danced?
Certainly I danced, Mulliner. A hornpipe, I consider it the duty of the higher clergy on these occasions to set an example. You didn't suppose I would go to a place like the home from home to play solitaire? Harmless relaxation is not forbidden, I believe.
But can you dance?
Can I dance? Can I dance, Mulliner? Have you ever heard of Nijinsky?
Yes.
My stage name.
Who did you dance with?
Well, at first I danced alone, but then most fortunately, my dear wife arrived, looking perfectly charming in some sort of filmy material, and we danced together.
But wasn't she surprised to see you there?
Not at the least. Why should she be?
Oh, I don't know.
Then, why did you put the question?
I wasn't thinking.
Always think before you speak, Mulliner.
The door opened, and Hypatia hurried in.
She's not... Uncle?
Ah, my dear, but I was telling you, Mulliner, after we had been dancing for some time, a most annoying thing occurred. Just as we were enjoying ourselves, everybody cutting up and having a good time. We should come in, but a lot of interfering policemen, a most brusque and unpleasant body of men, inquisitive too. One of them kept asking my name and address, but I soon put a stop to all that sort of nonsense. I plugged him in the eye.
You plugged him in the eye?
I plugged him in the eye, Mulliner. That's when I got this suit torn. The fellow was annoying me intensely. He ignored my repeated statement that I gave my name, my address, and only to the oldest and closest friends, and had the audacity to clutch me by what I suppose a costumier would describe as the slack of my garment. Well, naturally, I plugged him in the eye. I come from a fighting line. As you can hear, a little bit of my Irish coming out. Mulliner, my ancestor Bishop Ode was famous in William the Conqueror's day for his work with the battle axe. So I biffed the bird. And did he take a toss? Ask me.
But, Uncle...
Don't interrupt me, my child. I cannot marshal my thoughts if you persist in interrupting. Where was I? Ah, yes. Well, then, the already existing state of confusion grew intensified. The whole tempo of the proceedings became, as it were, quickened. Somebody turned out the lights, and someone else upset or contrived to leave without undue inconvenience. I last saw of her... It upset a table, and so I decided to come away. I trust that my dear wife also contrived to leave without undue inconvenience. The last I saw of her, she was driving through one of the windows in a manner of which I thought showed considerable lissomeness and resource. Ah, here she is, and looking none the worse for her adventures. Come in, my dear, come in. I was telling Hypatia and the good host here of our little evening from home.
The lady bishopess was not in the best of training. She had the appearance of a tank, which is missing on one cylinder.
Save me, Percy!
Certainly, my dear. From what?
In silence, the lady bishopess pointed at the window. Through it, like some figure of doom, was striding a policeman. The policeman closed the windows and stood with his back against them. It seemed to Augustine that the moment had arrived for a man of tact to take the situation in hand.
Good evening, Constable. You appear to have been taking exercise. I have no doubt that you would enjoy a little refreshment. I have an excellent tonic here in my cupboard, and I think you will find it most restorative. I will mix it with a little seltzer.
Caught you, have I?
I fail to understand you, officer.
I've been chasing her a good mile, it must have been.
Then why are you acting in a most offensive and uncalled for way? On her physician's recommendation, my dear wife takes a short cross-country run each night before retiring to rest. Things have come to a sorry pass if she cannot follow her doctor's orders without being pursued. I shall use a stronger word, chivied by the constabulary.
And it was by her doctor's orders that she went to the home from home, eh?
I shall vastly surprised to learn that my dear wife here had been anywhere near the resort you mention.
You were there too, I saw you too.
Absurd!
If you weren't there... No, I saw you punch Constable Booker right in the eye. I saw that.
Ridiculous!
If you weren't there, what are you doing wearing that sailor suit then?
Well, I cannot permit my choice of costume I arrived at. I need scarcely say, only after much reflection and meditation, to be criticized by a man who habitually goes about in public in a blue uniform and a helmet. What, may I inquire, is it that you object in this sailor suit? There is nothing wrong, I venture to believe, nothing degrading in a sailor suit. Many of England's greatest men have worn sailor suits. Nelson, Admiral Betty...
And Arthur Prince.
And, as you say, Arthur Prince.
Well, made me laugh, that did. Made me laugh when old Booker went head over heels that time. Don't know when I've seen a nicer punch. Clean, crisp. Well, I reckon you must have done a bit of boxing in your time, eh?
Quite true, officer. When I was somewhat of a younger man than I am present, I won the Curate's Open Heavyweight Championship 2 years in succession. Some of the ancient skill still lingers, it would seem.
I should say it does, sir, but what all the fuss is about, I can't say. Our fat-headed inspector says, go and raid the home away from home, so we gone and raided it, but my heart wasn't in it. And neither of the other fellas' their hearts weren't in it. You see, that's what I say. What's wrong with it?
Precisely, officer.
That's what I say. What's wrong with it? Let people enjoy themselves. It's how they like it. That's what I say. And if the police come interfering, we'll punch them in the eye. That's what I say. Same as you did, Constable Booker. That's what I say.
Exactly. A fellow considerable intelligence, this, my dear. Considerable intelligence.
I liked his face right from the beginning. What is your name, officer?
Smith, lady. But you can call me Cyril.
Certainly. It will be a pleasure to do so. I used to know some Smiths in Lincolnshire years ago, Cyril. I wonder if they're any relation.
Maybe, lady, it's a small world.
Though now I come to think of it, their name was Robinson.
Well, that's life, lady, isn't it?
That's just about what it is, Cyril. You never spoke a true word.
Well, I must say that you're a nice lot.
Who's a nice lot, lady?
These two. Are you married, officer?
Oh, no, sir, lady. Just a solitary chip floating along the ocean of life.
Well, anyway, I expect you to know what it feels like to be in love.
Oh, too true, lady.
Well, I'm in love with Mr. Bracy Gascoigne. You've met him, probably. Wouldn't you say he was a person of the highest character?
Oh, the whitest man I know.
Well, I want to marry him. And my uncle and aunt here won't let me. Because they say he's worldly. Just because he goes out dancing. And all the while they're dancing the soles of their shoes through. I don't call it fair.
I don't understand.
Nor I, my dear child. What is this about our not consenting to your marriage with Mr. Bracy Gascoigne? However did you get an idea like that in your head? Certainly, as far as I'm concerned, you may marry Mr. Bracy Gascoigne, and I think I speak for my dear husband.
Quite. Most decidedly.
Oh, good egg. May I really?
Certainly you may. You have no objection, Cyril.
None whatever, lady.
Oh, dear. Oh, dear.
What's the matter?
It just struck me that I've got to wait hours and hours before I can tell him. Just think of having to wait hours and hours.
Why wait hours and hours, my dear? No time like the present.
But he's gone to bed.
Well, rout him out. Here's what I suggest that we should do. You and I and Priscilla and you, Cyril. We all go down to his house and stand under his window and shout.
Or throw gravel at his window.
Certainly, my dear, if you prefer it.
And when he sticks his head out, how would it be to have the garden hose handy and squirt him? Oh, cause a lot of fun and laughter, that would.
My dear Cyril, you think of everything. I shall certainly use any influence I possess with the authorities to have you promoted to a rank where your remarkable talents will enjoy greater scope. Come, let us be going. You will accompany us, my dear Mulliner?
Sermon to write, Bish.
Just as you say, Mulliner. Then, if you will be so good as to leave the window open, my dear fellow, we shall be able to return to our beds at the conclusion of our little errand, in goodwill without disturbing the domestic staff.
Right-ho, Bish.
Then, for the present, pip-pip, Mulliner.
Toodaloo, Bish.
Augustine took up his pen and resumed his composition. Out in the sweet-scented night, he could hear the four voices dying away in the distance. They seemed to be singing an old English part song. He smiled benevolently.
A merry heart doth good like a medicine. Proverbs 17:22.